Thank you for attending the Ensuring Student Success and Program Effectiveness through Specialized Accreditation session. I am Jerome Fitz, and I will be moderating this session. Our speaker, Sandra Kinsey, will present for 30 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes, and we'll have Q&A for 10 minutes before we end our session. We have to end the session promptly at 12 p.m. If the presenter is not able to answer all of your questions, please contact the presenter directly at the email address listed either on their last slide, or you can contact the Office of University Assessment by email. As a friendly reminder, this session is being recorded, and when you register for the conference, you provide a consent for recording. If you would prefer that your like list not be published, please feel free to turn off your camera. From here, I will turn it over to Sandra for introductions and presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Fitz. I appreciate that great introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandra Kinsey, as Jerome mentioned. I'm Associate Provost within Academic Affairs here at PMU. I am also the Institutional Accreditation Liaison for the university, so SAC-COC Accreditation Liaison. And as we go throughout the program, you'll hear much of my roles regarding either institutional accreditation or programmatic accreditation, and intertwined within that is evaluation and programmatic assessment, which of course is the theme for today. What I want to speak on today, and let me share my screen. There we go. So what I would like to speak on today, or speak about today, really is the power of double dipping, right? Ensuring student success and program effectiveness through specialized accreditation. And you'll understand as I go through the presentation, which is informal. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to just chime in throughout the presentation. You could either come off of mute and voice your presentation verbally, or may share it in the chat and I'll read it for everyone. But today, consistent with the theme of evaluation and assessment, the goal for this particular presentation is that upon completion of this session, participants will demonstrate the ability to utilize superhuman powers to double dip as a means to effectively assess student learning. So I have empowered all of you to be your favorite character today. So please utilize your superhuman powers to demonstrate your knowledge of effectiveness, evaluation, and assessment throughout the presentation. And then, of course, as we continue building a culture of assessment here at the university. So some of you may ask, what is double dipping? And for me, the definition of double dipping that I have coined just this morning, as a matter of fact, is the act of using discipline-specific criteria and standards for programmatic evaluation to meet university standards for annual planning and reporting of academic program assessment. Many of you probably have heard, please don't double dip the chips. In this instance, though, it is okay to double dip. And what I mean by double dipping is that the university has a process for annual reporting of assessment plans, and then annual reporting for your results. And then many of you at the university, or many of our programs, also have programmatic accreditation or discipline-specific accreditation. So in this instance, the form of double dipping is utilizing your criteria for discipline-specific and/or specialized accreditation to meet the same criteria and process for university assessment through STARS. Okay. Before we continue, as I mentioned, I am the accreditation liaison for the university, and FAMU has a goal for all programs with specialized accreditation, as well as a goal for institutional accreditation. And that is each one of our units that have been granted either continuing accreditation or in the process of seeking initial accreditation, that either initial or continuing, your end goal is a maximum period of accreditation with no interim reports and no areas of partial or non-compliance. And I'm charged with that same goal as the accreditation liaison for SAC-COC 5th year and decennial reports for the university. So now that we have the compliance components out of the way, let's talk a little bit about why individuals fear assessment. If you heard the plenary session this morning, Dr. House mentioned building a culture of assessment. Dr. Robinson went back as far as 2008 with building a university-wide culture of assessment with the first implementation of the Office of University Assessment with Dr. Ohia. And then since then, we've had various directors working with SPAE and other units on campus to work with our academic programs as well as our student support services to integrate programmatic assessment and evaluation of what we're doing here at the university to either determine compliance or just to ensure really that we're offering high quality programs and that we're meeting the needs of our students as well as our industry. So when we go out to different programs here on campus and I speak to faculty within the units, these are some of the things that I hear as to why assessment might be difficult, or I don't know how to do assessment, or just general fear. If you look at any of these squares on the bingo template, what are some of the things that either you've shared, you felt yourself, or you've heard some of your other faculty say? Which one of these resonate most with you? Please indicate that in the chat, if you will. And I do hope no one says G will be used against us. Assessment at FAMU is not used against us. Rather, it is just a process to ensure that we're meeting the goals of our internal and our external partners. How many of you have heard that assessment is a waste of your time? So no one, so that's good. What about we're already doing it? Dr. Alexander, you mentioned how can we do our job? So when you hear that phrase, what context is it used in?
To get it all done and do it appropriately, that making sure that what we're trying to look at as far as this improvement, I'm trying to do the other aspects of the job as well as this. And I've also too heard no one reads it, which isn't true because so many people read it. I just think we're not doing the job of making sure that all faculty and staff understand what our part is in this part of assessment.
Okay, that's a good point, actually, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation, specific to faculty roles in assessment. holistic assessment for the entire program and not just course level assessment as they're teaching.
Hey,
Dean
Sandra,
Lowe,
you have a raised hand.
okay, what's that, Dean Lowe?
I did. I had it raised and then I lowered it because it was kind of piggybacking on what Dr. Alexander said as it relates to time. So it's not, people feel like it's a waste of time. I think it's more, it's an investment in time that people don't think they have. And so trying to figure out strategies that allow faculty and staff who support that effort the time to do it correctly.
You're right, Dean Lowe. And I like the word that you use, investment, because assessment is investment because we're investing in the quality of the academic programs here at the university. But then too, all of us are looking for more time in the day, which we don't have. And I'm not sure that I even want to extend the time in the day because we'll just continue to use it up and still say we don't have enough time, right? So what I'm hoping though, is at least by the end of the presentation, it will maybe encourage programs to look for ways to get some of that time back, or at least to maximize your time by trying to combine what you're doing for your discipline-specific accreditation to meet the university requirements. Everybody say it with me. It's okay to double dip. Right? So say it loud and proud. It is okay to double dip, right?
It's okay.
Everyone has heard that song. You dip, I dip, put your hands on your hip, you dip, I dip, right? So in this instance, it is okay to double dip, right? Dr. Iyer.
Subashini, I hope I said the name right, had her hand raised at one point.
Dr. Iyer.
Sorry, yeah. No, I just wanted to add that we are a unique joint program in the country. So it makes it all the more very tricky for our faculty because on one hand, they have to do detailed assessment to satisfy ABET standards. On the other hand, they have to enter it in 2 different systems and all that. But we have gotten around that with administrative support, and faculty now see the value in entering it because it really helps them when ABET comes for visiting. It really helps them just pull out those reports and just have it documented in a nice way. So people have started seeing the benefit of using Nuventiv, though it can get tiresome when they have like so many outcomes. And for example, in electrical computer, we have like 120 outcomes that they have to enter. So there, yes, in spite of all the work that goes in, they do realize the value of it.
Actually, that's a great example. So with the FAMU FSU College of Engineering, all of the undergraduate programs are accredited through ABET. And then we also have some programs on the main campus that utilize ABET. So ABET, similar to some of the other discipline-specific accreditors, have specific student learning outcomes that programs must assess and demonstrate student learning by the end of the program. So what engineering has done is taking those specific criteria defined by their accreditor and turn those into actionable student learning outcomes. And they use the Nuventiv platform to enter their data on an annual basis, and then also upload the source data as well as the documentation, so that by the time they get to their continuing education / reaffirmation visit, they're just downloading their annual assessment plans and reports to provide to include in their self-study. And that's the point that I'm hoping all of our programs with specialized accreditation can get to. Jerome, if you see any more hands, please just interrupt me as I go throughout so that we could address the questions.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Robinson mentioned in his opening speech, and I mentioned as well that I'm the SAC COC liaison, If any of you were part of Dr. Walker's speech, she referenced a particular standard with SAC-COC. And Dr. Robertson referenced the SAC-COC, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. That's the accreditor for FAMU. He mentioned that we are in the process of developing our 5th-year report for the university. And what that means is that we have to satisfy mid-year requirements in order to remain accredited with our institutional creditor. One of the standards for SAC-COC focuses specifically on assessment. And I mentioned this here is because we have really a 3-way partnership here at the university when we talk about assessment. First is institutional level assessment, but the standard that is required by SAC-COC. Second, for those programs that are going through specialized accreditation, many of you also have a standard related to assessment. And then thirdly, for the university on an annual basis through STARS and the Office of University Assessment, we also require planning and reporting. And the goal is to integrate all 3 entities into one so that you could use one report to serve all 3 bodies. And specifically, if you look at the components for 8.2, just standard 8.2 for SAC-COC, it states that the institution identifies expected outcomes, assesses the extent to which it achieves these outcomes, and provides evidence of seeking improvement based on analysis of the results in the areas below. Because we're talking about academic programs today, that is specific to letter A, and that's student learning outcomes for each of its educational programs. Just FYI, B is to assess our general education, and then C is for the non-academic units. So today we're going to focus on A. If we try to break down the elements of the SAC-COC standard, and each comma represents an element. Do you see any relationship between what our institutional accreditor requires, your programmatic accreditor, and STARS? So the first question is, do you see a relationship? Yes or no? So I see some heads nod. Is there anyone that does not see a relationship? Okay, very good. So of the components here, which one of these do you think is included with your discipline-specific accreditor? So this is institutional that you're looking at on the screen. If you think about, so we have occupational therapy is accredited. I see physical therapy. We also have education, journalism, engineering for sure, and pharmacy. Cardio as well. So if you think about your discipline-specific accreditor, is there either of these that is not required for discipline-specific accreditation? So all of you said A and C are required, and B is not, the assessment of general education. So then your accreditor does require that you assess student learning for your academic unit and the types of services that you're providing to your students. And if you look at the top phrase where it says the institution identifies expected outcomes, assesses the extent to which it achieves these outcomes, which of these phrases have you seen in STARS?
You have a raised hand from Gia Jones.
Okay. Gia?
It's Gian. Thank you so much, Dr.
Okay.
Kinsey. Dr. A actually
Oh,
mentioned
Gian from OT.
from
Great.
OT. Yes, we build upon undergraduate courses and knowledge in the graduate program. And then Professor Woods came and said A, B, and C. So Dr. A said it in the chat for me. Thank you.
And for STARS, if we think about the STARS components at the university, is there a section on there that says identifies expected outcomes? So identifies expected outcomes would be equivalent to developing your student learning outcomes. Then what about assesses the extent to which it achieves these outcomes? Is that component included in STARS?
That would be part of that data collection. And
Okay.
then using that data to make an analysis to complete decision-making.
That is correct. So if you look at STARS and you think back to the definition, STARS talks about first aligning what you're doing with your assessment reports to the university mission, the goals, the program mission, and your program goals. That is also required for your specialized accreditation, correct? And then STARS also requires as far as identifying your student learning goals. So that's in number 1, your strategic and student learning outcomes. And then if we go back to looking at the extent to which you achieve these outcomes, that would be sections 2 and 3, and then provide evidence of seeking improvement based on analysis of the results. That would be sections 4 and 5. So remember, 8.2 is for institutional accreditation. And as we were going through this, you mentioned that 8.2 is closely tied to discipline-specific accreditation. And now we're looking at the third piece of the triangle, which is STARS, the assessment process at the university. And we see that areas 1 through 5 also align very closely with institutional accreditation, discipline-specific accreditation, and now STARS. So let me pause. There's a question. Dr. Spears is stating, ultimate evidence to represent our education is accountable is student employment rates. Faculty and students can always do well, irregardless of student learning outcomes, and the students realize they have no substantial outcomes. Okay, so it sounds as if what you're saying, Dr. Spears, is that part of the assessment criteria should be a focus on job placement and employment rates. Is that correct? Okay, awesome. So when we look at those 3, is everyone beginning to see the relationship between institutional accreditation, discipline-specific accreditation, and STARS? Okay. So then we ask the question, where does specialized accreditation fit into the process? Essentially, specialized accreditation fits into the process because we're just trying to ask these specific questions here. What should our students be learning, right? That's the same that we're asking internally here at the university. Your accreditors are asking the same question. And then what are students actually learning? And what should you, the instructor, be doing to facilitate learning? And the way that you get to each one of those is just going through this process of assessment. So as a faculty member or administrator within your unit, you're asking these 3 critical questions, regardless of whether or not you have discipline-specific accreditation, right? Because the whole goal is to increase program quality and to ensure that we're offering high-quality programs at the university. So as an individual who's teaching or doing administration within a unit, I want to know what the students in the program should be learning. And then to determine what they should be learning, we have to first identify expected outcomes and identify appropriate ways to measure those outcomes. And then to assess what are the students actually learning, we would have to combine steps 2 and 3 here, which is identifying targets or benchmarks of what goals students should meet, and then assessing at the end of a specific period whether or not they met those outcomes. And then for part 4, looking at analysis of what the results mean, and then use those results for improvement. And if you do those things, you're able to answer the questions, what should students be learning? And what are students actually learning? And then as you do the analysis of the results and you use the results for improvement, you can answer the question, what should you as an instructor or faculty member or administrator within a unit be doing to facilitate that learning? And the continuous improvement piece is repeating the entire cycle to see what worked and what did not work to determine if additional changes need to be made. Okay. All right. Are there any questions there regarding the cycle before I go on? Awesome. So some of the essential steps, let me move those, to aligning assessment with specialized accreditation criteria is number 1, all faculty collectively must review the accreditation standards, your criteria, your principles and values. I use these different terms because these definitions mean different things for each one of your accreditors. Following, you'll take those accreditation standards or criteria and then determine which one of those are specifically related to student learning or individual learning of students in a particular course versus the type of learning that a student should have across the entire curriculum. And then you use the language of the standard to create a specific student learning outcome, and then collectively how that student learning outcome would be measured and in which course. Okay. And additionally, you'll take every section of the same course, utilize that same assessment measure, right, for consistency, gather your evidence, report it out in your faculty meetings, and then that last step that says determine if changes need to be made is what we refer to as closing the loop. Okay. So someone asked early on, part of the issue, of course, is time, and then also just trying to determine who should be involved in the process. So when we talk about faculty specifically, some of the faculty roles would be really all of the faculty that are teaching in a particular program should be involved in this course, because you have assessment that is done at the course level, and then you use that information to determine if assessment and learning is being achieved across the curriculum. So currently the political science and social science areas at the university do not or not accredited here at FAMU. Okay. Your faculty, so when I say all faculty, I'm referring to your full-time and your part-time faculty, your instructional and non-instructional faculty, and ensure that the involvement is continuous across each accreditation cycle, by semester and annually. And then you'll see to the right of the screen some additional roles that faculty may play. So let me pause and let's take a look at a particular case study approach for one of the schools here at the university. And this is for the School of Journalism and Graphic Communication. Our office and the Office of University Assessment, our office within the Division of Academic Affairs, Program Provost Office, has worked with the School of Journalism's programs in public relations and journalism to do exactly what we've said. So we've done an exercise with them, or really entire integration of their professional values and competencies, which are required for their accreditor, which is ACE JMC. This particular accreditor has 12 professional values and competencies, or at least at the time that I was working on the presentation. I think some changes have occurred since then. So, and what their agency says is that by the end of a student's journey in journalism and or public relations, they should have mastered knowledge or have mastery at the level of understanding for each one of these areas of values and competencies. And from what we know of your programs, you have something similar. Now, some of you may have less, some may have far more, but the goal is to begin to migrate some of your standards, your criteria, your values, your competencies, whatever term is used by your agency, develop student learning outcomes from those criteria so that you can begin to measure those annually and use Nuventiv to collect the data and store it each year so that when you're ready for your assessment report, you'll have everything that you need. Okay, so if we just continue to use ACE JMC as an example, their first principle dealt with students' ability to demonstrate their understanding of principles and laws of freedom. They also require that students have the ability to conduct research, which is number 10, critically evaluate their own work. Number 7 is to think critically, creatively, and independently. Number 5 is related in that students must understand concepts and apply theories. So I pulled those out specifically because if you think about STARS here at the university, STARS requires 3 specific components, and then you use those as headers to develop all of your other assessment criterion. So one of the ones that STARS requires is communication. Another is critical thinking, and the third one is subject area knowledge. So I know you're not familiar with many of you ACE JMC. Dean Lowe, I know that you are, right? Because this is your school. So if you look at the 12 values and competencies for ACE JMC and think about STARS, which I mentioned, has at least 3 overarching criteria: communication, critical thinking, and subject area knowledge. Which of these do you feel would apply to communication?
9, 8, 6,
So 9 and 8, definitely. They both have communication in the narrative. You said number 6, Dr.
yes,
Alexander?
ma'am.
Okay, so let's say 6, 9, and 10. So if we are able to convert, these are the standards that they say students must have. They must be able to demonstrate an understanding of professional ethical principles and work ethically in pursuit of truth, accuracy, fairness, and diversity. That's number 6. So if we take 6, 8, and 9, and we convert those to student learning outcomes, and these would satisfy communication, then with this one, are you collecting data for ACE, JMC to demonstrate compliance with number 6, 8, and 9? And then are you also able to satisfy the communication criteria for the University STARS report? Do you believe you could do both by assessing 6, 8, and 9?
I
Would
do.
6, 8, and 9 satisfy communication? And that could be anyone. It's not a trick question. Okay, so the answer for that one is yes. So the next area for STARS is critical thinking. So take a look at what we have here for ACE, JMC again. Which one of these would satisfy critical thinking for STARS? I'll give you a hint. Number 10 has the word critically
Yeah.
evaluate.
And number 7,
I also say 1, 2, and 3, Dr. Kinsey.
So number 7, well, 7 said think critically, creatively, and independent. 10, and then number 1, 2, and 3, understand, because they use the word apply, that means you have to think critically.
Yes,
Number
ma'am.
2 and 3 could serve that purpose as well. So now we've crossed off number 1, 2, and 3. We've also done 6, 7, 9, and 10. So the only thing, I'm sorry, was that Dr. Walker?
5 could work too.
Okay, and number 5. So out of the 12 principles, we've used 9 of those. So numbers 4, we've used 8. So number 4, 8, 11, and 12 are remaining. STARS has 3 criterion, overhead criterion, communication, critical thinking, and subject area knowledge. Where do you think those other 4 could go? We've used critical thinking and communication.
Well, 4 could go into the subject content area knowledge.
Number 12 could as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yep, because number 12 is looking at the communications professions, which fits
Number
both
11
public
too, right?
relations and journalism.
And number 8 too.
And then we have 8, conducting research and evaluation. That's correct. So the only thing left is number 4.
No, 4 would, I think, would be for content knowledge as well.
Okay, number 4 could be content knowledge, or they could also go into communication.
Yes.
So at least for ACE, JMC, they have 12 values and competencies.
We have 5 minutes remaining.
Okay, and they have, thank you, Jerome. They've used all of these to meet the STARS criteria, correct? So then the next thing they need to do is take the STARS rubric. And so then take your value, which was number 1, create your student learning outcome, which I've done this for them here. By the way, this is fictional data. This is not their actual data. Develop their metrics and their benchmarks. Are you all following? Right.
Yes,
So you
ma'am.
have your standard. Return this standard into a student learning outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the metrics means you just set a target on what students need to meet, right? So, and then the criterion was pre and post tests. So they tested students in a particular class, MMC 1, 2, 3, before it began, which was to test their knowledge of the history of journalism. Following, they gave a post test, meaning after some type of intervention, which was the instruction, to see if they learned. They reported the results, which is this column, analyzed the results. So in the analysis, they fell short in the spring because in the spring, students only met 10% above pre and post test, and their goal was 20%. So because students fell below in the spring, they devised a plan to make some changes in MMC 1234, okay, which was the revised lesson plan on this particular section of course instruction. And then they added some group exercises. And then the following year, closing the loop, which I did not include here, you'll take these results and let us know if they worked, and you repeat all over again. Okay. Are there any questions?
I have a question, Dr. Kingsley. This is Gian from Occupational Therapy. So we have accreditation coming up, and of course, we get a good report, right? Speaking it into existence. We take that and we then restructure, reformulate our STARS assessment. We can do that, correct?
You can after your
After.
visit.
Okay.
Because your visit is coming up too soon to
Yes.
make these types of changes, right?
Right.
So for OT, you could actually start after your visit, which
Okay.
is, next month.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And actually, if all of you want to start, that would be great, right? So, Dean Lowe, we've done some homework for you
Yes.
already, right? Again, that was fictional. Those were not their results, right? But I'm hoping that you all get a sense of how you could double dip and use what you're doing for your discipline-specific accreditation to meet university accreditation. And the reason I keep stressing this is because every year we hear that assessment is different. And then as programs are going through accreditation, they're collecting one set of data over here and then another over here. And they're just scrambling, right, to get it all done. And you don't have to do that. Just marry the two. And don't divorce them, right, after the accreditation visit is gone, right? Yeah. Long live discipline-specific accreditation and STARS, right? Happy ever after. So any of you that are going through accreditation right now, which several of you are, I don't recommend trying to go through this right now. But as soon as you unless you're a couple of years out, right? But as soon as you have completed your visit, the Office of University Assessment and myself are willing to help you marry your criteria and standards with what is required for the Office of University Assessment.
Thank you for a very informative and good presentation, Sandra. This ends our session. Enjoy the rest of Assessment Day 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerome.
Thank you, Dr. Kinsey.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
It was really good.
Oh, thank you, Phyllis.
Very
Thank
good.
you. Okay.
You and Dr. Labossiere did real good. When he finished his a little earlier, so we were able to come over and do both.
I was wondering,
Yeah.
I was like, I
Yeah,
thought they
his
were over
was-
in somewhere else. Okay.
Right, because Dr. Labossiere was talking about how to do the assessment, how to set up an assessment process with no money or a little bit how you could, and he had some really good points. So I'm glad that everything was recorded to go back and look at some of the things that he's been doing in his department.
Okay. Oh, well, great. Okay.
Yeah, but he
Okay.
finished his earlier, so we were able to come over here too.
Oh, well, thank y'all. George and Angela, is that it? Maybe we sign off?
They probably walked away.
Okay. Because they're still recording, so I just want to make sure.
Yeah. I guess it'll stop maybe when we log off. So I'm
Okay.
going to leave. Okay,
Right.
see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.